Almost everyone, from candidates to companies, gets salary negotiations wrong because they don't have the right perspective. To show you how to make the best use of this critical moment in the hiring process, I've recruited Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob.
Together, we'll take Bob through a salary negotiation process and show how he would handle the conversation if he followed the typical advice everyone else gives about salary negotiations. And then we'll look at why that will end up costing him more and coach him on how he could do this better. You okay with that, Bob? To make things more difficult, Bob's just on his second job out of college, he doesn't have a vast amount of experience, he's not very good at communicating or indeed negotiating, and he's not very confident about things. Bob's a bit of a noob at this, basically.
Hey!
We all start somewhere. If Bob can do it, anyone can. And in the process of helping Bob, we'll make sure this approach is one that anyone can use to boost their income over their career. We'll do this by breaking it down in just 3 questions that will change the course of Bob's career forever. First, let's look at how this kind of conversation will normally go. We'll just peep into the room where James, the hiring manager in charge of this process, is holding the salary negotiation.
Wait, why are you in here? Anyway, thanks for coming, Bob. I'm James. Please have a seat.
So, we'd like to make you an offer, but first, to make sure it's right, we need to know your salary expectations. Everyone who knows anything about salary negotiations knows this is the start of the mating dance between the hiring manager and the candidate, where they each find clever ways to avoid being the first one to quote a number.
Well, what's the salary range for this job? The advert said it was competitive.
Yes. I mean, we do have a range in mind, but it'd be great to know what you're looking for first. Even on his second job, Bob has already learned not to answer this question, and will dodge it by any means necessary.
Well, can you explain to me how the range was arrived at?
Of course. But first, how much are you earning at your current job?
This wonderful mating ritual can last for many minutes, until one of the parties finally breaks down and gives in.
This is a win-lose game. It treats the interaction between employer and employee as a zero-sum situation where for one party to win, the other one has to lose. It's also a short-term perspective that only looks at the present interaction, instead of taking a long view. This is really dumb from all sides.
But that's just the way it is, right?
It doesn't have to be that way. If you want to succeed in life, this is the sort of silly game you should actively avoid and redirect. As serial entrepreneur and angel investor Naval Ravikant says in his wonderful almanac, play long-term games with long-term people. All the returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest. Even if the hiring manager you're playing with is trying to railroad you into a short-term game, you should be thinking in terms of the longer term. Now, over the long term, if the market is at all efficient, and it typically is, especially these days as everything is global and interconnected, your salary will tend to approach your market value. Now, if you manage to negotiate your way to a higher salary, you might be able to overshoot that line by a little bit. But if your employer is overpaying, that will self-correct eventually. Either they'll smart it up and fire you, or they won't and then they'll go out of business to more efficient competitors. Now, of course, your market value isn't static over time. If you're playing the work game right, you develop new skills, both soft and hard, and this line can and should be going up over time. Now, salary negotiations are like wiggles around the line. Sometimes you'll be above, sometimes you'll be below. If you believe in yourself, and I really hope you do, the potential of that line is nearly limitless. Eventually, if you get really skilled and you have that interest, you can even take the cap off entirely by striking out on your own and getting the market to value you directly as a startup founder or as a freelancer. The key point in all this, though, is that focusing on the little wiggles is the wrong mindset. Maybe you'll get paid 10% more here or 10% less there. If your market value is rapidly going up all the time, that ends up being chump change in the long run. As an example from my own life, I was paid $22,000 on my first job. I did not negotiate. It was my first full-time job out of university as a junior software engineer. The following year, I switched to the consulting branch of the business and got bumped to $32,000. Then I got promoted from analyst to consultant and went up another $10,000. Just before I left the corporate world, I declined the job offer for $60,000. And this was far from the ceiling for a corporate career. This is the sort of progression you should be aiming for, not getting 10 or even 20% more or less during salary negotiations. Instead, you want your valuable skill sets to be growing so fast that jobs become available to you that have much higher pay associated with them. As a bonus, those jobs are usually more fun.
What does this have to do with salary negotiations and interviews, though?
It's like this, Bob. The biggest factor affecting how fast your market value can increase, apart from your own drive, is what kind of environment you're in. In fact, even if you can't quite find enough self-belief in yourself at the moment and feel a bit stuck, Getting into the right kind of company will help you with that too. So the best way to make that curve steeper is to join an employer who realizes that business is a positive-sum, win-win game and who will support you to thrive. Annoyingly though, companies are very good at pretending to have a great culture when they don't, claiming to have values and purpose when they just care about their money bags, and putting out videos showing how wonderful it is to live on their free-range corporate farm. So the only way you're really going to figure it out is by talking to people and asking just 3 key questions. And salary negotiations are the best and last opportunity to figure it out before you commit years of your life to a company that's going to flatten your market value or even drive it down.
How are they the best opportunity? I'm under pressure, there's a job offer on the table, we're talking about money. This is really stressful.
That's how bad companies want you to feel, but actually that final stage is where you have the most power and where the company is the most vulnerable and likely to reveal its true colors. See, as a candidate, you may not realize this, but hiring is a very expensive process. It takes a lot of effort from many people, causes a lot of disruption, and takes a long time. And often the hiring process only kicks off when the job should have been filled months ago. So by the time you're having the salary negotiations, the team you're about to join has been hurting for 6 months or more. By the time you're talking salary, the company really wants to hire you. If you say no, it'll mean they've flushed a bunch of money down the toilet, the team may have to wait another 3 months to find another good candidate, and the hiring manager you're speaking to will look like they failed at the easy step after everyone else put in all this effort to interview you and dozens of other candidates. So really, you're in the driving seat, and the person in front of you has the information you need. Don't be scared. Take control.
But how?
First of all, relax. Take a deep breath. That's it. You're in the room. James is the one who's sweating, not you. He's about to look like an idiot if he doesn't do this right and loses the best candidate. His downside if you say no is very high. Tens of thousands of dollars, months of delay, and public embarrassment. But your position is the reverse. Your downside is highest if you say yes to the wrong job. That could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run. So your default should be no until you're really sure.
But still, how?
You want clear evidence that this is a good environment to work in. And for this, you're going to start with a question that by itself is going to reveal a whole lot about the company culture there. You ready?
Okay. We need to understand your salary expectations.
Yes, of course, we'll get to that. But first I had a few questions I wanted to ask.
Oh, okay.
So the first one is, I like what I'm hearing so far, but before I can commit further, I'd love to understand better how you handle feedback in this company. What kind of processes are there to help people improve their performance over time? Do you have any kind of internal coaching? Wait, why is this important? People can't improve without clear and regular feedback. Companies with good cultures know this. Companies that don't know this are not going to maximize your growth. What you're looking for in their answer is for the feedback to be regular and frequent, or ideally even continuous, and for there to be some kind of process around this. That's the ideal, not yearly performance reviews or even worse, no process at all. Bonus points if the company also commits to providing regular mentorship or coaching from a more senior employee. But whether the processes are all over the place or rock solid, the most important thing you're looking for is not actually the details of the answer, but the attitude. If the company culture is good, the person you're speaking with will be positive and excited that you care about feedback, because they know that feedback is super important. If they get defensive or shifty about it, take that as red flag number 1 before moving on to the second question.
But wait, what if they take the job offer away?
They won't. Not after they've invested so much in recruiting you. Tens of thousands of dollars, remember? But you know what? If they do, count yourself lucky. A company that pulls back an offer when you ask about feedback processes would have wrecked your personal growth and demolished your long-term earnings. If they do that, you really dodged a bullet. But don't worry, you will get to ask that second question.
Thanks, that's great. I have a second question. I'd like to understand how you go about calculating salary and total compensation here. Not the breakdown of what they are, but how do you decide that somebody needs a pay raise? What's the process for that, and how do you come up with a new number?
Again, here the ideal is that they excitedly pull out their laptop and show you the breakdown of the process for how all of this is done. If they do that, great, you're likely onto a winner. But even if their process is still like a bunch of straws stuck together with sellotape, what you're looking for more than anything is attitude. Are they open, and do they engage with you on this? Or do they close up, get confused and embarrassed, or try to fob you off with a non-answer? In the latter case, you have another red flag. And one more caveat. If the process is you chat with the boss and convince them to give you a pay raise, that's not a process. That's just random and counts as a massive red flag too. This is important because a good culture will understand that having clarity and transparency about how compensation is calculated is essential to build trust and enable people to work at their best. In particular, making the system more clear and explicit reduces the amount of time people spend playing political games to try and get their salary up, and also reduces the chances people end up having to leave to progress their career. So a good company will care a lot about getting this right.
Won't they think I'm just asking for a pay raise even though I haven't joined yet?
Maybe, but if you get that sense, you can reassure them like this.
I love developing and increasing my impact over time, so it's important to me to understand how the company will deal with that.
If they react negatively to you basically saying you're ambitious, again, that's a really clear red flag. It means they're saying that they're scared of you progressing and increasing your impact there. So you won't grow much in that environment. At this point, since you've just talked about salary, they may try to escape your questions by going back into salary negotiations mode. Don't follow them there. Instead, remember you're in control.
So I really must ask, what's the salary range you're expecting? Oh, we'll get to that. There's actually one last question. So I think it's important to understand in any relationship what will happen if things go wrong. That's really revealing of a lot of things. So my last question is, can you please describe to me the process that was followed when the last person who was fired was let go? Like, what happened? How did they find out? What were the steps to support them? That sort of stuff.
It may seem odd to talk about people getting fired when you're getting hired, but this third question is extremely powerful to detect a bad workplace.
How so?
In essence, one of the main hallmarks of good company cultures is they create a sense of safety. When people aren't spending all their time watching their own backs, they're more free to be creative, to collaborate, and to deliver great results together. Companies where the process for letting people go is unclear or abused never feel safe, and they are rarely places where people can thrive. What you're looking for here is either a clear process that appears like it was genuinely supportive of the person who was let go, or a bad process followed by an admission that the process sucks and needs to be improved. This is hard for companies to get right, so many companies with good culture won't have this sorted out yet. But they should be self-aware and understand that it matters and be trying to make it better. Again, defensiveness or a non-answer will be a red flag. Though the worst burning red flag will be if the hiring manager is dismissive and blaming towards the person who was fired. It's like when they ask you about your previous workplace. If you start complaining about your previous boss and colleagues, they'll probably take that as a negative sign. You should do the same here.
But after these 3 questions, shouldn't I still negotiate salary?
You know what? If you really want to, you can. But think about what you now know about this company. They are going to make efforts to give you clear feedback and mentoring to help you improve. There is some sort of clear process or a desire to have a clear process to increase your salary after you join. And they care about creating a safe working environment where people can thrive. If these are all thumbs up, working here will probably be great for your market value. So instead, my suggestion is to try and drop the negotiation mindset and move into a collaboration mindset. Hopefully by now, the hiring manager is also actually wanting to do this. And when answering the second question, they've already quoted a number. If they don't do it themselves, you can prompt it like this.
Okay, that's great. I'm really excited. So for the rest of the conversation, can we look together at how the pay scale was applied to me for this role?
If they insist, you can safely disclose your salary at this point, and even have a chat about whether that was a good evaluation of your market value by your previous employer. There's all sorts of ways you can take it. Now that you know that this is the kind of workplace that will enable you to increase your market value over time by developing new skills and flourishing as an individual. It's a place where you and the employer will both win.
What if I get red flags though?
Well, then it's your call. I can't judge your specific circumstances. Maybe you're unemployed and you really need the work. Maybe the salary they're offering makes such a difference to you that you think it's worth working in a bad environment. Maybe you're leaving an even worse workplace. As much as possible, I think you should try to keep the long-term perspective in mind, but ultimately you know more about your specific situation than anyone else. So you'll have to make a call yourself. At least you now have a lot more information. And if you knowingly join a company with a bad culture, you're going in there with your eyes open. And maybe you can keep interviewing at other companies alongside this new job, or start planning your exit soon.
Wait a minute, what happens if I get the job and it's a good company?
Most people who want more out of their career want to get promoted, but they tend to go about it the wrong way, for example by working extra hard to do a good job. Doing a good job at this new company is good, of course, but it's not enough. As a founder, I've employed over 100 people and interviewed over 1,000. If you want to get promoted sooner, this video will teach you some essential habits you can follow that will maximize your chances and get you ahead of 99% of people. Thanks for your time. I hope you find joy and fulfillment at work, as everyone deserves to.